Hey guys, tonight we begin with something a little muddy, a little misty, and deeply rooted in the calm rhythm of an ancient life lived mostly on water. You open your eyes to a blanket of damp air, curling low over the still surface of Lake Xochimilco. The sun hasn't risen yet, not fully, but a pale light is beginning to shimmer off the lake, and somewhere in the reeds, a duck is yelling at nothing in particular. You're lying in a hammock, strung between two wooden poles on a tiny floating island, your chinampa. Beneath you, the island is made from layers of mud, lakeweed, and rotting reeds, all woven together and coaxed into buoyancy through sheer agricultural stubbornness. This is your home, your farm, your entire world. And, if you were wondering, yes, it occasionally smells like a compost pile with dreams of greatness. You stretch, your back cracks. A frog croaks in polite sympathy. You reach down beside the hammock for your woven sandals, which are slightly damp because everything is slightly damp. The air smells of wet earth, decaying lilies, and the faint, distant scent of tortillas from a cooking fire on a nearby island. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these sleepy journeys travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pad quietly across the chinampa. It squishes a little underfoot, not in a worrying way, but in the way that reminds you that your house is basically a floating salad. A wooden paddle leans beside your canoe. You'll need that soon. The lake is vast, stretching around you in silver-blue ripples. In the distance, the outlines of other chinampas dot the surface like soggy patchwork. Some have tall stalks of maize swaying gently. Others are bare, freshly rebuilt, or waiting for the next season. The Aztecs didn't invent chinampas, but they perfected them. Historians still argue whether the original idea came from the Xochimilco people centuries earlier, but there's no debate that by now it's become an empire-wide art form. You bend to check the ropes anchoring your island to the lake bed. That's right. Floating islands don't just drift aimlessly like lily pads. You've driven willow stakes down through the muck to keep it all in place. Willows are chosen not just because they're bendy and friendly, but because they'll actually grow into living posts, sprouting roots, and helping stabilize the entire thing. Gardening meets structural engineering, with a touch of botany and a dash of mud-based optimism. A heron flaps by, long legs trailing behind, like someone forgot to finish sculpting it. You nod politely. It does not nod back. Inside your little reed hut, just enough space for sleeping, storing tools, and keeping dry things vaguely dry. You fetch your planting pouch, a mix of amaranth, beans, squash, and maize, your staples. Each one has its place in the cycle. The three sisters, some call them, for the way they support each other. Corn grows tall, beans climb the corn, squash shades the soil. It's teamwork, but in vegetable form. You scratch at a bite on your forearm and sigh. Mosquitoes love chinampas. They consider you part of the buffet. Nearby, a grandmother on a neighboring island starts singing, a tuneless rhythmic chant that means, I'm awake, and so is my laundry. You wave across the canal. She waves back with the corner of a damp hui pill. The air is warming. The lake's mist is lifting. You'll need to begin the day's work soon, dredging more mud, layering more weeds, pulling out old plants. It's relentless, but it's life. Chinampas can feed a city. Tenochtitlan, the heart of the empire, floats not far away. Every canoe load of vegetables that leaves these islands helps fill one of the thousands of bowls in the bustling capital. It's said that a single acre of chinampa can yield 7 harvests a year. You don't know if that's true, but your knees certainly believe it. You look up. The clouds are lazy today, the kind that seem to take naps in the sky. A gentle breeze rustles the willows. Somewhere a child shrieks in laughter as a canoe tips slightly too far to one side. Your own canoe waits for you now, tied up and rocking gently. The paddle leans against it like an old friend who never offers to help, but always shows up anyway. You step in and push off, drifting between the water lanes, liquid streets carved with human patience, and generations of muddy footwork. You've got seeds to plant, a city to feed, and later, maybe if the wind's just right, a nap in the hammock while the ducks mutter in circles around your island. You jab your paddle into the silty water and push gently. The canoe glides forward, the soft slap of water against wood barely louder than your breathing. Around you, other farmers begin to stir. Some are already bent at the waist, scooping up muck from the lake bottom with wide, flat baskets. Others squat along the edges of their chinampas, their fingers moving through the soil with practiced rhythm. Plucking weeds, checking roots, rearranging young maize like fussy parents. You head toward a patch of your floating garden that needs reinforcing. Last week's rain softened the edges too much, and if you don't rebuild the structure, part of your island might decide to go explore the lake without you. Your cargo this morning is mud, delicious, fragrant, black lake bottom sludge. And also reeds, long, tangled, half-rotted, but still pliable. You begin layering them, mud, reeds, lakeweeds, mud again. Then you pat it down with a wooden board and stand back, admiring your work like a chef presenting a very sad sandwich. This is how chinampas are made, one handful at a time, over years. It's laborious, muddy, and deeply satisfying in that way that only things built slowly and by hand can be. You think about that sometimes, especially when your toes go numb standing ankle-deep in cold water for hours. Chinampas aren't magic. They're just engineering with patience. Though it helps if you don't mind being damp for most of your adult life. You pause to scratch your arm again. The mosquitoes are still winning. Someone on a nearby island swears by smearing fish guts on their skin as a repellent. You tried that once. You lost friends. The sun climbs higher. A thin steam rises from the black soil you're working. It's rich with nutrients, centuries of rotting plant life, fish waste, duck droppings, and whatever else the lake offers up. Historians still argue whether this muck was considered sacred or just really, really useful. But you suspect the truth is both. Every now and then, a child's laughter echoes across the lake. One of your neighbor's sons is pretending his canoe is a warship, yelling imaginary orders and splashing with wild abandon. You smile. Childhood on the Chinampas is half mud, half mischief. You crouch down and dig your fingers into the soil to check the roots. It's an odd sort of intimacy, knowing exactly how your maize is doing just by touch. These plants are your livelihood, but also your quiet companions. You talk to them sometimes when no one is close enough to hear. You sprinkle crushed lakeweed over the top of the rebuilt section. It smells faintly of brine and pond snail. It's going to be a good season, you can feel it. Unless, of course, the emperor decides to requisition your crops for one of his endless ceremonies. That's always a possibility. The Aztec nobility loves a good ritual. And flowers, lots and lots of flowers. You try not to think about it. For now, the plants are yours. So is the soil and the sky above, and the gentle tug of water against the sides of your canoe. You push off again, heading to another part of your chinampa. This one's older, roots long and tangled, soil firm beneath your feet. You walk it slowly, checking every plant, patting every corner like a gardener checking a sleeping child. You remember when your father first taught you to do this. He told you the chinampa was a living thing, that if you neglected it, it would sag and rot and crumble. But if you fed it and shaped it and whispered to it every morning, it would never let you starve. He also told you not to date girls from across the southern canal because their island drainage was inferior. You chose to ignore that part. The work continues. A basket of compost here, a new willow stake there, another section of floating soil given shape, stitched into the lake like a patch on a quilt. It's not glamorous, but, in the same bone-deep way, you know when it's going to rain, that this work matters. You're not just farming, you're holding a city together, quietly, one muddy footprint at a time. A canoe passes nearby, the paddler waving as she goes. Her boat is full of squash, each one nestled in woven mats to keep from bruising. She's humming. You can't quite place the tune, but it sounds like something your mother used to sing when no one else was awake. You wave back and wonder if she's going to the market early. Maybe she's got a good harvest to trade. Maybe she just needed a break from the ducks. Your own stomach rumbles, reminding you that you've been rebuilding soggy farmland for 2 hours and have yet to eat anything more solid than your resolve. You sit down on the edge of the chinampa and unwrap a small cloth bundle. Inside, a tamal, still warm from earlier, and half a roasted chili. Not fancy, but good. Familiar. As you eat, a dragonfly lands on your knee. It stares at you with the absolute confidence of a creature that's never had to farm. You nod respectfully. It leaves without paying. The wind shifts. The lake ripples. Somewhere a conch shell blows, announcing that the priests are starting a mourning ceremony in Tenochtitlan. You can't see the city from here, but you can almost feel it. Mooring, the heartbeat of the empire, fed by hands like yours. You wipe your hands on your tunic, smearing a bit more mud than you remove, and slide back into your canoe. Today is a planting day. The sun's high now, casting warm light across the water, and the breeze has picked up just enough to shoo the worst of the insects away. It's a good day for sowing. Your planting pouch is worn smooth from use, the strap fraying, but the seeds inside are what matter. You untie the flap and run your fingers through the mix. Maize, beans, squash, and a few amaranth grains tucked into a corner like stowaways. They clink together softly like dry rain. You push off again, paddling slowly through the narrow canal between your chinampas. The water is dark, flecked with bits of floating weed and the occasional confused insect. The smell is earthy, mud and lake and growing things. You know this route by feel, your paddle brushing the shallows at just the right angle to turn your canoe gently into place. At the planting bed, you kneel. The soil here is rich and dark, made over years from layered lake sediment and organic waste. You lean forward, parting the soil with a carved stick, and begin to plant. Maize goes in first. A few inches away, a bean. Near the base, a squash. The three sisters, planted not in rows, but in family circles. They'll support each other as they grow. The corn gives height. The beans give nitrogen. The squash gives shade. It's like a communal apartment building for vegetables. Historians still debate how precisely this technique developed. Some say it's purely practical, a way to maximize yield in limited space. Others argue it's ceremonial too, rooted in myths of agricultural harmony. You don't argue either way. You just know it works. Your chinampa has never let you go hungry. You move methodically, paddle now set aside as your hands become your tools. The motion is familiar. Scoop, drop, press, pat. A rhythm more than a task. You hum quietly to yourself. It's not a song you know. It's more like the tune your hands make while working. Every few rows, you stop to adjust a young willow sprout or pluck out a weed. Some weeds you leave. Not all intruders are bad. There's one, chaya, the locals call it, that tastes good boiled and keeps mosquitoes away if you burn the leaves. Plus, it grows like it's got something to prove. You glance across the canal. Another farmer is planting too, his canoe tied up nearby. He waves, and you trade the universal farmer's greeting. A shrug and a shared look that says, "Well, this isn't going to plant itself." He calls out something about rain next week. You nod. The sky's been twitchy lately. If the clouds break wrong, you'll need to cover the seedlings, or risk watching all your hard work turn into fish food. You dig your fingers deeper into the soil, a bit too deep. Your nail grazes something hard. You pull it up, a small shard of pottery. It's smooth, decorated with a faded red spiral. You turn it over. Probably a bowl fragment, maybe from 50 years ago, maybe 200. These lakes are full of history, buried in mud, hidden in root tangles. Sometimes, when you're lucky, the chinampa gives you little reminders that you're not the first one to plant here. You place the shard gently at the edge of the bed. Some farmers toss them back into the lake, believing the spirits prefer it that way. You just like the way it looks, catching the sunlight. Your planting continues. The sun beats down. Your back aches. A bead of sweat drips down your nose, hangs there for a moment, then falls into the soil beside a bean. You wonder if that counts as watering. A dragonfly hovers nearby. Another one? Or maybe the same one from earlier, making rounds like a tiny inspector general. It seems unimpressed. You ignore it. Far off, the sound of drums begins. Ceremonial rhythms float over the water, distant but steady. A festival day? You try to remember. Maybe the Feast of Zilonin, goddess of young corn. Or perhaps just another noble's birthday, and they're calling on the gods to ensure their bathwater heats properly. You're not sure. Your hands are sore now. Your pouch is almost empty. You've made good progress. This whole section will be ready before sunset. You stretch and arch your back, then sink into a squat beside the canoe for a quick drink from the gourd tied to the side. The water is cool, slightly sweet from the herbs you packed in earlier. You rest for a minute, letting the breeze cool your skin. The rustling of willows and soft lapping of water is the only sound for a moment, and it feels like even the chinampa is holding its breath. And then, splush! A fish leaps nearby, lands with a noisy flop. You jump, curse softly under your breath, and look around to see if anyone saw. The answer, thankfully, is no. You gather the tools, brush dirt from your tunic, and push off once more. A few more beds to finish. Then it'll be time to think about lunch. Maybe something with chili and wild greens. You smile, paddle dipping again, the sun glinting off the water like tiny coins scattered by careless gods. You coast your canoe along the edge of the chinampa, the paddle trailing loosely in the water. There's a familiar stench on the wind, a musky, nose-wrinkling aroma that can only mean one thing. The ducks have arrived. They're not your ducks. Ducks don't really belong to anyone out here. They float in whenever they please, quack judgmentally at your crops, and leave behind a mess that, curiously, turns out to be one of the most valuable resources on your farm. You nod to the leader of the flock, a chunky fellow with a bent feather on his head, and he ignores you, as usual. You dock beside the compost basket, hop out, and begin your rounds. Today's task is gathering more fertilizer, which means scooping up whatever the ducks have graciously left behind. It's not glamorous work, but it keeps the maize tall and the beans generous. Your basket is woven from lake reeds, reinforced with old cords. It swings on your hip as you work, collecting a grimy mix of decomposing leaves, fish bones, duck droppings, and other swampy treasures. You use a flat-bladed scoop carved from a gourd shell. It's not efficient, but it's quiet. And at this hour, quiet is king. You crouch at the water's edge, peering into the shallows. Fish dart between the weeds. You spot a plump axolotl blinking lazily at you, half buried in silt. You nod to him too. He blinks again. You're not sure if it's a hello or a threat. Above, an egret lands with exaggerated grace, teetering on one leg before stepping daintily into the mud. The birds here are both your companions and your competition. They eat the same fish you like to trap, and they're not above stomping through a planting bed with wild disregard for your neat little rows. You shake your head and shoo the egret off. It flaps away, honking in protest. It'll be back. It always comes back. You return to your composting. The muck is rich, black, and full of wriggling life. You layer it into a shallow pit at the corner of your chinampa, covering it with reeds to let it stew in peace. In a week or two, it'll be perfect, crumbly, warm, and humming with potential. Historians still argue whether the Aztecs had a formal system of crop rotation or if it was more intuitive, a passed-down blend of instinct, observation, and superstition. What's clear is that these floating farms didn't just survive, they flourished. With the right mix of muck, water, sunlight, and a bit of duck luck, a chinampa could keep producing season after season. You adjust the stakes anchoring the island. The willows here are young, their roots only just beginning to knit into the structure. They need a bit of coaxing, some trimming, a few whispered promises, and maybe a bribe of crushed fish if you're feeling generous. A neighbor drifts by in a canoe, humming. She slows beside your plot and holds up a net. Today's catch: 3 tilapia and a very confused turtle. You laugh and she grins before paddling on. The sky is shifting now, softening from morning brilliance to a pale midday shimmer. The lake glows. Dragonflies zip past in shimmering blurs. Somewhere behind you, a toad croaks once and then falls silent, as if embarrassed. You pull a few water weeds, mostly tule and chichicastle. Some of these you'll pile into compost. Others, the less slimy ones, you'll boil later for dinner. They have a bitter flavor, like something your grandmother would claim is good for the blood, though she never specified whose. The ducks return in greater numbers. You watch them as they pick through the flooded edges of the chinampa, occasionally scaring up frogs or snails. One of them waddles right into your compost pile, gives it a sniff, and settles down as if to say, "Yes, this will do." You let it be. Some days you pick your battles. You paddle over to another plot, one still in early preparation. The soil is pale and dry. It needs a fresh layer of muck. You glance into the water and make a note to dredge that area later. The bottom there is dark, undisturbed, perfect for the thick mud your maze craves. You break for a moment under a willow. Its shade is dappled and thin, but enough to cool your shoulders. You chew a strip of salted fish, gnawed from a pouch in your belt. It tastes like lake, salt, and survival. You're not sure if that's a compliment. From this quiet corner, the lake feels infinite, a mirror stretched to the horizon. You know that across the water lies Tenochtitlan, city of stone and smoke, its pyramids rising like mountains out of the mist. But from here, there are only islands, reeds, ducks, water. You close your eyes just for a moment and let the scent of wet earth drift through your senses. The chinampa creaks beneath you, a small sound, but steady, alive. This is your empire, not of conquest or gold, but of roots and rot and stubborn green life, and duck poop, lots of duck poop. You squint at the edge of the island. The weeds have returned, again. They're relentless, weaving themselves into the sides of your chinampa like they own the place. Some are harmless, even helpful. Others, like the spiny trumpetilla, grab onto your ankles with the confidence of a toddler mid-tantrum. You reach for your weeding stick, the one with the flat end carved from bone. It's smooth from use, the handle molded by years of sweaty palms. You begin to scrape gently at the base of the intruding plants, loosening their grip on the soil. The roots release with a reluctant squelch. Some weeds go into the compost basket. Others, like the prickly milka, you set aside for the stew pot. Bitter, but nutritious. That's the thing about chinampa life. You learn quickly not to waste anything. Everything has a use, even weeds. You reach into the water to pull a clump of tule reeds. They resist. You pull harder. A frog leaps out, offended. You apologize. It doesn't respond. Back on the chinampa, you spread the reeds out in neat layers to dry. Later, you'll use them to patch your roof. Maybe even weave a new mat if time allows. You have 3 mats, and they all smell like lake water. You've stopped noticing. A small pile of fresh-cut chaya leaves sits beside you now. You pluck a few for lunch and drop the rest into a reed basket. Across the canal, your neighbor is boiling hers already, steam rising from a clay pot nestled into a ring of stones. She catches your eye and nods, offering a bite if you bring firewood later. You raise your eyebrow in theatrical negotiation. She laughs and waves you off. You return to the weeds. One in particular, Acoyoatl, has snuck into your amaranth bed. It's fragrant, a bit like anise, and oddly pretty when it flowers. You leave a few in place. A little wildness is good for the soul. Historians still debate whether certain Aztec crops were intentionally co-cultivated with local weeds for pest control or simply tolerated due to laziness or luck. You lean toward somewhere in between. You pause to stretch your back. Your spine makes a sound like a snapping reed. You groan softly and sit on a tree stump. It's your weeding throne, carved years ago from a driftwood log and adorned with exactly one decorative shell. You call it the seat of slight authority. No one else is impressed. A bird lands near your basket. It's a coot, small, plump, and rude. It tries to steal a milka leaf, and you shoo it away with your stick. It hops indignantly, as if offended that its thievery was not met with applause. You watch it waddle off, muttering. Then you turn your gaze to the water's edge. There, hidden beneath a curtain of hanging reeds, is a small collection of eggs. Duck eggs. You count 4, fresh, warm. You gently gather them and place them into a padded cloth in your canoe. They'll be part of dinner tonight, if you can keep them away from the neighbor's children, who seem to have a sixth sense for eggs. The sun is now high overhead. The water glitters with light. You see tiny fish just below the surface, darting like slivers of silver thread. You consider setting a small net later, just enough for broth, or maybe your neighbor will have some leftovers. She always overcooks tilapia and insists it's crisped on purpose. You smile at the thought. Nearby, a reed mat floats lazily. Someone must have dropped it from a boat. It drifts toward your chinampa, catches on the willow roots and stops. You pluck it out and set it aside. It's waterlogged, but salvageable. Everything's salvageable here, if you're patient. And patience, you've got plenty of. Chinampa life teaches it, through weeds, through weather, through the quiet certainty that everything is slow, but nothing is still. You resume your weeding, pulling and sorting, humming as you go. The tune is something your grandfather used to whistle. No words, just breath and rhythm. You never asked what it meant, and now he's gone, taking the secret with him. But the melody stays. There's a rustling behind you. You turn to find a small boy staring at your basket. He's barefoot, grinning, and obviously planning to ask for something without asking for it. "Eggs?" he says. You blink. "What eggs?" He grins wider. "The ones the coot told me about." You sigh and hand him one. He darts off with a whoop of victory, leaping into a waiting canoe where his sister is already laughing. You shake your head. There goes dinner. Again. But the laughter echoes over the lake, and for a moment everything feels just right. The ducks, the weeds, the sun, the slow rhythm of hands and soil and time. You reach into the water for another tangle of tulle, your fingers brushing the mud, the lake, the deep, slow life beneath it all. You've bundled your harvest, squash, herbs, a few reluctant chilies, and one very smug-looking duck egg, and now it's time for the journey to market. The canoe rocks gently as you step aboard, the woven baskets secured with thick twine, balanced just so. You check that your paddle's not splintering, give the baskets a firm nod, and push off into the canal. The water's calmer now, shaded by the willow trees that line the narrow passage. Their roots reach down into the water like curious fingers, searching for gossip. You steer between them, heading toward the wider channel that leads to Tlatelolco, the great marketplace of the Aztec world. You pass other canoes along the way. One belongs to an old man with a canoe full of clay bowls, each one rattling gently as he rows. Another is piled high with marigolds, the bright orange petals glowing like fire in the morning light. She must be preparing for an offering, maybe for Xochiquetzal, goddess of flowers and love, or just for a wedding. Hard to tell with marigolds. They're emotional multitaskers. The canals are crowded today. You're forced to wait behind a boat carrying what appears to be an entire pig, and also, confusingly, a goat that seems to be navigating. The driver shrugs at you, as if to say, animals have opinions. The air thickens as you near the city. Smoke from cooking fires drifts across the water. Voices rise, echoing across the lake in bursts. Barter, greetings, arguments, laughter. Tlatelolco is awake. You reach the docks. A busy tangle of canoes, baskets, shouting boys, and one man loudly claiming his avocados are enchanted by priests. You don't question it. You've heard weirder. Your baskets are light, but they smell good. Fresh herbs, soft soil, and the unmistakable sharpness of chili oil. You lift them onto your shoulders and join the human river flowing toward the market's heart. Tlatelolco stretches before you, a vast open space paved with stone and packed with stalls. It's not just a market, it's the market, the center of trade for the empire. You can buy a canoe here, or a dog, or a carved obsidian mirror that supposedly shows your true self. You declined that offer last week. You weave through the stalls. A boy offers you roasted ants. You pass. Another man waves a basket of cacao beans. Tempting. But your mind is on vegetables, and the little patch of mat you rent every third day, nestled between the spice sellers and the man who won't stop yelling about the purity of his tamales. You set up quickly. Spread the reed mat. Arrange the squash in tidy rows. Stand the herbs in a damp cloth so they don't wilt. You place the single duck egg in the center like a prized jewel. Someone will ask about it. Someone always does, and soon they come. A woman with a head wrap asks about your amaranth. A boy pokes a squash and pretends he knows what he's doing. An older man examines your chilies with exaggerated suspicion before buying 3. You barter with quiet efficiency. No shouting, no flair, just calm trade and the occasional dry joke. You even swap a handful of mint for a handful of salt, a deal you weren't looking for but knew you'd need. Historians still marvel at how structured Tlatelolco was. Every type of good had its zone. Cloth here, pottery there, wild animals in a loud, chaotic corner over yonder. Officials walked the aisles ensuring weights were fair and traders honest. They wore feathers to show their authority. You once saw one chase a pineapple thief. It was magnificent. You trade a few more herbs, sell the egg. It goes to a woman who says her daughter hasn't eaten in days. You don't ask why, you just nod and slip an extra squash into her basket. Lunch arrives in the form of a tamal, traded for 2 chilies and a joke about your canoe's paint job. You sit under a shaded awning and eat in peace, watching the crowds flow by. Merchants from far-off lands, Mixtec, Zapotec, even strangers from the coast with fish wrapped in banana leaves. You see someone in a full jaguar costume. For once, it might be ceremonial and not just dramatic flair. You close your eyes and rest a bit, letting the hum of the market lull you. The voices, the drums, the calls of sellers advertising peppers and textiles and carved gods. It's a living song, never quite the same twice. When you reopen your eyes, a girl is peering at your basket. She points at your last bundle of quelites, wild greens with a taste like peppery lettuce and a stubborn tendency to regrow everywhere. You give them to her. She hands you a bracelet made of woven grass. You smile. It won't last a week. But then, neither will the quelites. You pack up as the sun tilts downward. Your baskets are nearly empty. Your shoulders ache. But your spirits don't. The market has taken and given, as it always does. You step back into your canoe, the water now glimmering with the gold of late afternoon. And as you drift away from Tlatelolco, a duck watches you from the shoreline. It nods. You nod back. You glide back through the narrowing canals. Your canoe riding lower now that the baskets are empty. The lake has settled into its afternoon hush. The wind has softened, and even the birds seem quieter, as if the market's chaos wore them out by association. You steer with one hand and the other resting on your knee, wrist warm from the sun. Today was a good trade, not amazing, not feast day riches, but solid. Enough to replace your worn sandals, maybe buy a handful of salt, and that soap root your neighbor keeps recommending for your hair, which, let's be honest, is beginning to resemble a lakeweed sculpture. You pass a small group of children, standing knee-deep near the reeds. One has a fishing spear far too large for his body. Another is poking something in the water with a very serious face. They're hunting frogs, probably, or trying to summon spirits. With kids, it's often both. You call out a greeting. They wave, too busy for adults. You were that age once, soaked to the bone, clutching a dripping turtle, as convinced it was the guardian of the underworld. Spoiler, it was not, but it did bite your cousin and gain a reputation. Back on your chinampa, you unload your few purchases, salt, a bundle of strong fiber cord, some, and a rolled scroll of medicinal plant drawings, traded from a merchant who claimed they were hand-copied by monks. You're not sure which monks he meant, or where they came from, but the sketches are nice. You'll hang them in your hut. You head to the far corner of your island, where the older farmers tend to gather in the afternoons. Not always to work, sometimes just to talk, to trade cuttings, or complain about the weather like it personally betrayed them. You arrive just as one of them, an elder named Matlek, finishes a long meandering story about a talking possum that once convinced him to plant chilies upside down. You're not sure if the story is new, or if he's looped back to the beginning again. No one minds stories in the Chinampa network are like canoes. Sometimes they drift, sometimes they double back. You hand Matlek a few of your extra amaranth seeds. In return, he offers a cutting of Sempo Alsochitl, the flower you see on altars. Its roots help with stomach cramps, he says, or possibly ghosts. You thank him? It's a useful plant either way. Another farmer joins in, boasting about a new grafting technique he swears he invented. He claims he can make a squash plant grow 2 different kinds of squash. Someone else mutters that the only thing he grows well is disappointment. Laughter follows, gentle teasing, nobody's mean. Not here, You're all trying to make islands float? You show your scroll of plants. One elder leans in, squinting. She taps a drawing of a tall, leafy plant and says it's tlalquequetzal, good for fevers, but bitter enough to scare the sickness away out of spite. Another points at a flower and says it's just a pretty weed. A third shrugs. Could be either. Historians still argue how much botanical knowledge Aztec farmers truly had. Was it systematic science, bust-a-mouse, or folk wisdom passed down by hands and hunches? You look around at your neighbors, barefoot, muddy, arguing about roots, with the same passion nobles reserve for poetry. You decide it doesn't matter. The knowledge lives, and that's enough. The sun begins to dip. The talk fades, replaced by quiet gestures. One farmer prunes a willow, another sharpens a paddle. You braid the sempuoxoquitl cutting into your belt for safekeeping. It smells like sun and pepper. A canoe pulls up beside the island, its driver whistling a tune. That sounds suspiciously like Matlak's possum story. It's your friend from 2 plots over, a wiry man named Teoxia, who grows nothing but herbs and insists he can talk to bees. He leans over and drops a basket at your feet. For you, he says. Inside, bundles of fresh epizote, a tiny jar of bee sap, and a small rock that looks suspiciously like a frog. You raise an eyebrow. Protection, he says. From dreams that smell like duck feet. You nod solemnly. The worst kind. Evening settles softly across the Chinampas. The sky goes lilac at the edges. Shadows stretch long and slow. You walk back to your hut, ducking under a low willow branch, and pause at the doorway. Your hands smell like mint and compost. Your back aches in that satisfying way. That means the work was honest. You're hungry, a little damp, and more than ready for sleep. But first, you light a small oil lamp and place the frog rock beside your hammock, just in case. You may not believe in dream ducks, but you're not taking chances. The sky is inked with dusk now, deep blue folding into soft purple, and the lake is turning glassy, still enough to catch the reflection of each lonely star as it winks into view. You light a small torch at the edge of your chinampa, just above the water, and its flickering glow ripples across the reeds. The frogs are singing, not in unison, of course. They're not trained, but in a loose chorus of croaks and chirps, and the occasional aggressive plurk. You sit by the canal, legs dangling over the edge, toes just grazing the water. Somewhere far off, a canoe creaks as it's pulled onto a dock. Another gentle splash. Likely a turtle, or something pretending to be one. This is your favorite time of day, and when the sky forgets its chores, when the lake hushes and all the noise becomes soft, you breathe deeply. Earth, smoke, damp wood, a hint of chili from someone's cooking fire, and settle into the stillness. Then you hear it, a rustling near the willows. You tense slightly, only to see the culprit, an egret. The same rude one from this morning, probably. It struts through your squash like it owns the place, then flaps indignantly when it sees you watching. I live here, you mutter. It flaps louder in protest. You reach down to splash the water, and it finally lifts off, wings wide and awkward, vanishing into the dark with an irritated squawk. You suspect it'll be back before dawn, possibly with friends. You return your focus to the chinampa itself. One of the corner stakes is loose again, probably shaken by yesterday's rain, or nudged by that egret's dramatic exit. You rise, retrieve a mallet from your tool shed, which is really just a slightly less leaky part of your hut, and hammer the post down until it stands firm again. The sound is hollow but solid, like knocking on the belly of the earth. You trace your hand along the post, feeling the cool bark, the damp roots beginning to twist deeper. If it takes, this willow will help bind the island tighter. It's not just anchoring, it's growing with you, a partner, in a way. Historians still debate whether chinampas were considered spiritual spaces or simply pragmatic farmland. But out here, in the dusk, with your hand on living wood and the stars overhead, you can't help but feel like you're part of something older than explanation. You sit again and dip your fingers into the water. It's cool, silky. A few tiny fish dart past. One bumps your finger and scurries away like it's made a terrible social error. You glance toward your neighbor's island. A small flame flickers there too, her silhouette faint against the reeds. She's feeding a baby, cradling it in one arm sore while stirring a pot with the other. A soft lullaby drifts across the canal, slow, repetitive, soothing. You can't make out the words, but you recognize the rhythm, a song for sleep and for growing things. You lean back onto the mossy edge of your island. The thatch of your hut rustles softly behind you. Inside, your hammock sways slightly in the night breeze. It creaks like an old friend stretching their arms. You light a small cone of incense, copal, traded at the market in exchange for herbs, and place it near the door. The smoke rises in lazy spirals, drifting up into the night like a prayer with no urgent requests. There's comfort in this, rituals done not out of fear or formality, but simply because they feel right, like placing stones at the corners of the planting beds. Like whispering thanks when the first squash blossoms open. No priest required, just a farmer with dirty hands and a little hope. You stand again and walk slowly around your island. You check the edges, feel the firmness of the soil. Make a mental note to harvest more tool reeds tomorrow. Maybe even fish a bit. Your stew's been tasting suspiciously vegetable lately. Even ducks need protein, you think? Glancing at the half-eaten pondweed patch where one particularly bold mallard made himself a salad buffet. A breeze stirs the willows. You pause, letting the leaves brush your shoulders, whispering their secrets into the night. The frogs have quieted slightly. The stars are brighter now, reflected on the lake's surface, like someone scattered light across a mirror. You crouch down and scoop up a handful of water, letting it trickle back through your fingers. Cool, clean, ancient. You think about how long people have lived here, fished here, grown things, watched the sky from a floating island, and wondered if the world ever changes, or just spins in circles, like a canoe caught in the current. You rise, muscles tired but content. It's time to rest. As you turn toward your hut, you hear one last sound behind you, gentle paddling. A canoe, gliding past in the dark. A figure stands at its bow, face hidden, holding a bundle of herbs. You raise a hand in greeting. The figure nods once, then fades into the shadows. Probably a neighbor. Probably you step into your hut and close the reed door behind you. Inside your hut, the air is warm and thick, with the earthy scent of dried herbs and old smoke. The walls are woven tightly with reeds, patched here and there with scrap cloth and bits of bark. It creaks faintly in the wind, like a wicker basket that dreams of becoming a house. You run your hand along one of the roof beams and feel the familiar smoothness where your palm always brushes. When you duck inside, you light your little fire in the clay brazier, just enough to heat a small pot of water and keep the chill away. The flames glow low and sleepy, casting slow-moving shadows on the walls. You toss in a few episode leaves from your new bundle and stir the pot gently, watching the steam curl upward, like the last thread of daylight leaving the lake. Dinner tonight will be simple. Mashed squash mixed with ground amaranth, a pinch of salt, and those wild greens you foraged earlier, quilets, still damp from the basket. It's not royal food, but it sticks to your ribs, schwat, and doesn't judge your cooking. As the stew bubbles softly, you settle into your hammock, swinging a little. The fabric wraps around you like a friendly snake, one that smells like roasted maize and very faint mildew. Your legs dangle off the side. The door is open just a crack, letting in a stripe of moonlight. Outside, the frogs have resumed their concert. Louder now, one of them sounds unusually confident. You pull a small woven pouch from beneath your sleeping mat. Inside, trinkets, bits of pottery, smooth stones, a single quetzal feather you found floating on the lake last spring. Not valuable, not really useful, but they remind you of things. The way the lake looked that day, or how the wind smelled when you found the feather. A timeline made from odd leftovers. You add the grass bracelet the little girl gave you at the market. It's already wilting. Still, it earns a place. You tuck it beside a flat shell that hums faintly when you hold it close to your ear. No one else hears it. You don't mention that part. Your stew is done. You sit up and eat straight from the pot with a carved wooden spoon. The squash is sweet, the amaranth nutty, the greens still have a little bite. You chew slowly, some, each spoonful, warm and grounding. A gust of wind rattles the door flap. You glance out, nothing but stars, reeds, and your torch's tiny reflection in the canal. You reach to close the door fully but stop. Leave it slightly ajar. You like to hear the water. It reminds you the world is still moving, even when you're not. Outside, the frogs are suddenly quiet again. You wait. Then croak, one brave solo, The others quickly join in, embarrassed by the silence. You grin and set your bowl aside. The hammock sways beneath you, the warmth of dinner spreading through your limbs. You close your eyes for a moment, just to rest them, and hear something strange, a low voice. Not close, not clear, just a whisper drifting on the wind. It might be someone singing from a distant chinampa, or your own memory playing games. The tune is unfamiliar, but the rhythm feels old, like something you've always known. You listen, you drift, and then a sound. Footsteps? No, just the reeds brushing in the wind. But you still check. You step out of the hut barefoot, the earth cool beneath your feet, and walk to the edge of the chinampa. The moon is high now, and the lake is silver with quiet. You scan the water. There's no one there, just the floating shadows of other chinampas. A few torches still flicker. Someone coughs. A dog barks. Faint and far. You take a breath. The air smells of fish, mint, and something warm you can't quite name. Comfort, maybe. Then you see it, a reflection. Not yours. Behind you. You turn quickly, but nothing's there. Just your hut. Your torch. Your island exactly as you left it. You sigh and shake your head. Long day. Longer thoughts. You return to the hut, tug the door mostly closed, and slide back into the hammock. The fire has dimmed to coals. The night presses in soft and dark, full of sleepy sounds. Historians still argue about what the Aztecs believed lived in the lake at night. Spirits, gods, watchers. You've heard stories. You've told a few too. But out here, what matters isn't proof. It's presence. You let the sounds of water and wind wrap around you like a second blanket. The hammock creaks once more. The moon shifts behind a cloud, and you sleep. The morning finds you before you're ready for it. Not rudely like some days, but with the slow insistence of light creeping across your eyelids, and the unmistakable sensation of a mosquito using your forehead as a landing pad. You wave it off in a half-dream, then sit up, blinking against the pale gray light. The lake is still, blanketed in a low mist that muffles every sound. You step out of your hut barefoot, and the earth is damp and cool under your toes. A few reeds bend toward you, as if offering a greeting. You nod back, out of habit. Your chinampa is quiet but alive. Somewhere under the soil, the roots are stretching. Somewhere in the reeds, a duck is snoring. You hear it, loudly. You check the corners of the island. The edges have held, no slumping, no drifting. You give one of the willow stakes a gentle kick for good measure. It stays put. You like it when things do that. Then you hear a splash. You freeze. Not a fish splash. A large splash. You crouch at the edge of the canal, peering through the reeds. And there it is, a very wet egret, floundering gracelessly in the shallows. Its wings flapping like soggy laundry. It pulls itself onto your planting bed, stares at you with weary resentment, and proceeds to preen, pretending nothing happened. You shake your head. You again. It honks. You're not sure if it's an insult or a thank you. You head to the canoe, intent on checking the far plots. As you paddle gently down the channel, the mist clings to your shoulders like a shawl. The sun begins to rise in earnest, smearing orange across the lake's surface. A new day, stretched wide and golden. Then, up ahead, you spot them, figures in a boat. 3 of them, wearing wide cloaks with the city's insignia stitched in red. Officials. You sigh, but not in dread. You've seen them before. They make rounds now and then, checking crops, taking notes, sometimes asking odd questions like, "Do you chant while planting?" Or, "What's your average bean yield per moon?" You dock your canoe and wait, arms crossed casually. They step onto your island one by one, the leader carrying a ledger, the others with satchels and very serious sandals. The lead official is thin, hawk-nosed, with an expression carved from baked clay. He nods at you. Farmer. You nod back. Inspector. He sniffs. How are your willows? Willowing. He scribbles. They begin to walk the chinampa, tapping roots, sniffing leaves, inspecting squash with expressions that suggest they've seen better squash in their dreams. One of them picks up a weed and raises an eyebrow. This intentional? You glance. Yes, it keeps the bugs away and gives my neighbor anxiety. He grunts and moves on. They reach your planting beds and confer in low tones. One of them uncorks a small clay vial, dabs a drop of liquid onto the soil, and sniffs deeply. He nods solemnly. You think he's just showing off? Historians still debate whether these agricultural inspections were truly about crop quality, or more about maintaining imperial image. After all, When your city floats on engineered islands, it's important those islands don't smell like defeat. Eventually, the lead inspector turns to you again. Your canals are clear. Your plots are balanced. Your maze is enthusiastic. You bow slightly. I coach them daily. He ignores the joke. Keep it up. The Emperor has announced an expansion of the temple granaries. Your district will be contributing more this season. You sigh inwardly but nod. More food, more hauling, less sleep, but also, more importance, Chinampa farmers near Tenochtitlan carry weight, not in status, but in necessity. You feed the machine. The inspectors file back into their canoe. The hawk-nosed one pauses before boarding. "Oh," he says, "and your egret is off balance?" "I know." He smirks, just slightly, and paddles off. You watch them go, their boat slicing through the mist. The lake swallows them in silence. You return to your Chinampa, adjusting the torches at the corners. You note where the compost needs turning, where the reeds have shifted, where a child left a trail of muddy footprints that end mysteriously beside a bush. You'll investigate later. Then you spot it, your duck egg stash, raided. Empty. 2 feathers remain, arranged in what might be a taunt. You mutter. The egret honks. You sigh, and then you smile. Because really, this is the rhythm of it. Mist and roots. Inspectors and ducks. Beans and paperwork. You live in a floating world that feeds a stone city. You wake with frogs and sleep with fish, and the crops are growing. That's what matters. The sun climbs higher now, lifting the mist like a curtain on a stage, revealing the full sprawl of your Chinampa. Everything is golden. Soil, stalks, the slow curve of squash vines stretching toward the water's edge. You check the seedlings near the southern plot, your hands brushing gently through rows of young maize. Their leaves are sharp and tender, still waking up. You whisper to them. Just encouragement, maybe a joke. You're not sure they understand, but they seem to appreciate the effort. From the eastern canal, laughter drifts toward you. You glance up to see her again, the girl with the lettuce. She's in her canoe, poling it expertly through a tight turn. With one foot balanced on the rim like a circus act, she's transporting a stack of greens in wide baskets, bound with twine and topped with 2 small gourds, likely heading to her grandmother's plot, or maybe to market. You wave. She waves back and calls out, "Want to trade? My lettuce for your opinion?" You grin. "Only if I can eat my half." She steers over, the canoe rocking gently as it nestles beside your plot. You help tie it off and step aboard for a closer look. The lettuce is, in a word, vigorous. Deep green, crisp, a little too confident. She plucks a leaf and hands it to you. You chew. It's fresh, with a hint of lake on the edge. "It's awake," you say, possibly planning something. She snorts. "My grandmother says if you eat too much lettuce, you'll fall asleep standing up." You arch an eyebrow. "Like a duck?" She says ducks are immune. This kind of exchange, light, fleeting, full of folklore and food, is a daily delight. Farmers talk shop, but they also talk nonsense, which is equally valuable. You both laugh, then sit on the edge of her canoe. While the boats rock gently beneath you, she asks about your compost pile, specifically how you keep the beetles out. You confess you don't. You just outnumber them. She tells you her uncle uses lime powder, but it makes everything smell like soap. Then she leans in a little, conspiratorially. "Do you believe the lake listens?" You pause. Listens how? Like when you talk to the plants, or when you say thank you before harvesting. Do you think the lake hears? You consider. "I think it remembers." She nods slowly. "That's worse." You both laugh again, this time quieter, more thoughtful. Historians still puzzle over how much ritual surrounded everyday Aztec agriculture. Was it religious? Was it habit? Were offerings just polite gestures or sacred duty? You, sitting in a swaying canoe, sharing lettuce philosophy with someone who smells like soap root and sunshine, think it's all of the above. And maybe it doesn't need an answer. You trade a bundle of mint for some lettuce and a small wooden spoon she carved herself. Crooked, but charming. She says it's good luck. You tell her everything on a Chinampa eventually becomes a spoon. She drifts off down the canal, humming a tune with no words, the wake of her canoe drawing gentle lines in the water. You watch her until the reeds hide her silhouette, then turn back to your work. You check the herb rows. Epazote, amaranth, chaya. You pause beside a strange little plant that you didn't plant, but that keeps showing up anyway. You decide to let it stay. It has determination, possibly delusions of grandeur. You stoop to pluck weeds, adjust rows, Check roots. One vine has curled itself in a perfect spiral. You leave it. Beauty is also a crop. As you work, you catch fragments of conversation from across the water. An argument about the best way to dry beans. Someone complaining about the price of lime. A child shouting, "I didn't mean to drop it," followed by an ominous splash. Typical morning. A canoe passes slowly. 2 elders on board, one holding a stack of codices. They call out greetings. You wave. They invite you to a gathering tonight on the far side of the lake. Music, storytelling, possibly too much fermented cactus juice. You promise to come if the ducks don't sabotage your day. By now, the sun is directly overhead. Your back aches in that deeply satisfying way that says you've done something real. You take shelter under the largest willow, your hands stained with soil. Your pouch full of small trades, a spoon, a cutting, a bit of gossip, and a question about whether the lake listens. You rest your head against the tree and close your eyes, just for a moment, just to listen. And the lake, in its own way, says nothing. But you feel it all the same. The wind shifts around midday. Not a strong wind, just enough to rattle the willows and carry the scent of wet wood and rain on its way. You feel it before you see it. A prickling in the air, a damp hush rolling across the water. You open your eyes beneath the willow tree and sigh, pulling yourself upright. Overhead, the clouds have darkened into a soft, slow-moving blanket. No thunder yet, but the kind of sky that hums with promise. You scan the chinampa and take mental inventory. Some seedlings are too new to face a hard rain. You'll need to divert the runoff. Again, you grab a hoe and begin shaping small trenches around the new planting rows. Not deep, just enough to guide the water where you want it. You've done this 100 times. Maybe 1,000. It's like writing your name over and over in soft soil, hoping the rain respects the signature. A nearby chinampa has already started preparing. You hear the sharp thunk of someone driving fresh stakes, the rustle of tarps being unfurled. You should probably cover the herb bed too, unless you want to start a new line of soggy oregano tea. You pause by your compost pile. It's steaming faintly from within, a good sign. The ducks have contributed. The fish guts are decomposing nicely. And there are no new beetle colonies declaring independence. You cover it with a fresh layer of reeds, just in case the rain turns into a flood. Wet compost is usable. Drowned compost? That's soup, and not the good kind. You glance skyward again. The clouds are heavier now. The light is golden but strained, like it's passing through old cotton. You work faster, tying down the lighter baskets, bracing the roof corner that tends to leak directly onto your hammock. Then comes the first drop. Just one right on your forehead, of course. The second one lands on your shoulder. Then 3 more on your back. Then 20, all at once. You laugh, not because it's funny, but because what else are you supposed to do? You grab the last bundle of reeds and toss it over the squash bed as the rain begins in earnest. It's not violent, at least not yet. Just a steady, determined fall, like the sky remembering it had a job to do and is now making up for lost time. You retreat to your hut, sliding inside with damp clothes and muddy hands. You leave the door open a crack to watch. Outside, the lake ripples. The reeds bow in polite applause. The soil darkens to black, soaking up the gift. You sit on the floor beside the brazier, warming your fingers as you drip quietly into a clay bowl. You make a quick tea, mint and chaya, steeped in hot rainwater you caught from the roof edge. It smells sharp and green. You sip slowly, the steam fogging the little window in the wall. Historians still argue whether Aztec farmers designed their chinampas to channel stormwater, or if it was simply clever trial and error, refined over generations. You suspect it's both. You don't need a priest to tell you what too much rain does to new roots. You've seen it, you've cursed at it, and today, you've prepared for it. Still, you watch closely as the water begins to pool at the northern edge of the chinampa. You rise, groaning slightly, and grab your paddle. You'll need to open the channel a bit. Let some of the water run back into the canal, before it drowns your maize like tiny green soldiers in a losing battle. Outside again, you push your canoe into the water, and row to the far edge. Rain spatters your face, slides down your neck. You dig into the soil at the corner, creating a small spillway. The water begins to drain slowly, obediently. You give it a pat, just to say thanks. The rain eases. Just a little. The wind shifts again. And then, just like that, the storm breaks. Not stops, breaks. The clouds tear open with a sound like the gods clearing their throats. And the sky pours, sheets of water, rivers from above. Your chinampa quivers underfoot. You hunker down in the canoe and wait it out. rain soaking your tunic, drumming on the paddle, roaring louder than your thoughts. A bolt of lightning cracks in the distance, somewhere near Tenochtitlan. A deep rumble follows, rolling across the lake like a wave of sound. Your shoulders tense. Not fear, just instinct. The ducks are screaming. You nod in solemn agreement. Minutes pass. Maybe more. Then, stillness. The storm moves on, slipping westward like a retreating army. The rain fades to mist, then nothing. The lake glitters again, startled but calm. Water drips from the willows, mops, like tears from a story that's already been told. You return to your hut, soaked but triumphant. The chinampa held. The seedlings survived. Your hammock is only slightly damp. You peel off your tunic, hang it by the brazier, and settle onto the mat. Outside, the frogs are silent for once. Even they need time to recover. You lie back, breathing in the post-rain air, mud, smoke, green life. It smells like work, and survival, and something close to grace.
The rain has passed, but it left behind its fingerprints. Tiny puddles cradled in leaf folds, squelching footprints along the edge of your hut. Said, "Neferspokkweld, wadabasin," and a sharp, clean scent that clings to everything. You rise early the next morning, stepping out into air that feels newly born. The sky is a pale, rinsed blue. The sun peers shyly over the hills, hesitant as if checking whether it's safe to come out again. You kneel by the maze, inspecting the stalks like a proud parent after a school recital. No damage. The roots held, the trenches worked. The squash leaves are still a bit droopy, but they'll perk up by midday. You brush some stray petals off a bean vine and whisper your usual half-joke. You did good, you didn't drown, that's worth celebrating. At the southern edge of the Chinampa, and near the shallows, you've left a small clay dish filled with water and 3 squash blossoms. It's an old habit. It's one you picked up from your grandfather. An offering, not to a god, specifically, but to the lake itself, or to the idea of it. You don't expect miracles, it's just balance. You pour in a few drops of chili broth from last night's dinner, because even spirits appreciate flavor. Then you do something no one really talks about. You kneel, not for show, not even fully out of belief, just for a moment of stillness. Your knees press into the damp earth. The clay dish is warm from the first touch of sun. You close your eyes. You listen. The lake answers with silence. That's all you need. Historians still argue how much the daily lives of Aztec farmers were entwined with ritual. Was every act a form of prayer, or was it just routine, made sacred by repetition? You suspect both again. A chinampa is a conversation with the earth. And like most conversations, sometimes it's words, and sometimes it's just showing up. Back on your feet, you walk the edge of the chinampa, board, checking the moorings. The willow posts are stronger now, roots winding downward, stubborn and quiet. One in particular, an old one near the compost pile, is blooming. Small pale flowers, almost invisible. You nod at it, and in your mind, it nods back. You hear paddles behind you, 2 boys in a canoe, carrying long bundles of reeds. Their mother waves from a distance. They call out that they're building a new raft garden, and do you have any extra tool or advice? You call back, plenty of tool, very little advice. They laugh, farming, and disappear around the bend. You walk back toward your hut, but pause halfway. Your fingers twitch. You've been meaning to do something. You retrieve the old basket from beneath the hammock, woven years ago, now faded and cracked. It served as everything from a seed pouch to a pillow. Today, it'll serve one last time. You gather a smooth black stone from the canal's edge, the quetzal feather, the grass bracelet, a sprig of epizote, and a broken obsidian pendant you found 3 summers ago, and never could part with. You place them gently into the basket, one by one, like tucking in old friends. Then you carry it to the canoe and paddle toward a place you haven't visited in months, the far reeds, the part of the lake no one farms anymore. It takes time to get there. The channels narrow, the birds grow braver, and the water deepens into silence. When you arrive, you stop paddling and let the canoe drift. You lower the basket into the water, one hand steadying it until it floats. You watch it for a while, the ripples circling out, the sunlight catching on the feather. Then you let it go. The lake takes it without fuss. It drifts toward the horizon, but small and stubborn. You paddle home slowly, thoughtfully, a few dragonflies pace you for part of the way, their wings making small music. You arrive back at your Sainampa, just as the sun rises high enough to dry your tunic. You stretch, crack your neck, and decide today's the day to finally finish weaving that mat you've been ignoring for 2 weeks. Or maybe fish, or maybe nap. You don't decide yet. The morning is generous with its pace. You sit by the canal's edge, and feet in the water, and think not of gods or empires, but of roots, blossoms, and the soft sound of a basket floating away. You wake to the low thrum of insects, and the soft hiss of wind moving through reeds like a secret being shared. The light is dimmer today. Clouds have gathered again, not for rain, but for shade, filtering the sun into a gentle silvery wash. It's the kind of light that makes the world feel suspended, like a held breath. You spend the morning walking the length of the Chainampa barefoot, feeling the soil beneath your soles, still damp from the last rain. Each step is a reminder. This floating patch of earth isn't just a garden, it's a living raft, and you are, quite literally, trusting it to hold you. You inspect the squash vines. One has bloomed in the night, its yellow blossom wide and ridiculous, like a sun trying too hard. You pinch it off and place it behind your ear. You're alone out here, might as well dress up for the lake spirits. Today, there's no immediate task, which is rare. No inspectors, no storm clouds, no barter appointments. You toy with the idea of a rest day, then immediately sabotage it by deciding to reinforce the eastern bank. You dig out fresh mud from a shallow spot in the canal, thick, black, sticky stuff, and begin layering it with reeds at the edge of the Chainampa. Your hands vanish into the work. The rhythm takes over. You forget time. You forget lunch. You forget that your back isn't as young as your ego claims. It's only when you pause to wipe sweat from your brow that you notice. Someone's watching. Not a person. A heron, tall, perfectly still, perched on a stake like it's judging your craftsmanship. You stare at each other for a moment. "I'm doing fine," you say. It blinks. You return to your mud. When the new bank wall is finally shaped, and the stakes padded in place, you sit back and admire it. It's not art, it's not pretty, but it'll hold. Maybe longer than you will. You wash your hands in the canal. The mud swirls away like a slow exhale. Then you notice something bobbing in the water. A small gourd, carved with spirals. Not yours. Probably drifted in from another plot, or maybe left as an offering by someone upstream. You fish it out, shake it. It's empty. You set it on your hut's windowsill. Maybe it'll find a purpose later. You eat under the willow. Roasted maize from yesterday. A bit of dried fish. A spoonful of honey you traded for last week. That somehow hasn't disappeared yet. You lick it slowly from your finger, eyes half closed, letting the taste linger longer than necessary. You lie back. The willow's branches flutter overhead, casting lazy shadows that flicker across your face like moths. The earth hums beneath you, an almost imperceptible vibration, like the Chainampa itself is purring. You think about Tenochtitlan, not far across the water. The city hums too, stone streets, feathered courtyards, echoing drums and marketplaces alive with arguments about chili prices and the superiority of one obsidian blade over another. But that world feels far away out here, and more, you wonder if it always should. Historians still puzzle over why Chainampas didn't spread far beyond the Valley of Mexico. The system worked brilliantly, yet few other cities copied it. Maybe it was geography, maybe politics, or maybe the floating life was simply too quiet and too muddy and too intimate. You close your eyes and think about all the tiny systems at play just beneath you. Roots thickening, worms turning earth, water seeping upward, then back down again. You think about how something can look still, and yet never stop moving. A breeze rustles your tunic. The squash flower behind your ear flutters and falls. You let it go. You wake later than you expect. The sun is slanting low now, the sky honey-colored. The gourd on your windowsill is gone, likely knocked over by the wind, or stolen by the egret. You'll blame the egret either way. You stretch, yawn, and realize you haven't spoken aloud all afternoon. Not a word. You smile at the silence. It suits you. Before heading inside, you walk one last circuit around the island. Everything's holding. Everything's green. You pluck one mint sprig and tuck it behind your ear where the squash blossom had been. The scent is sharper, cleaner, less showy. You stand by the canal and stare into the water until your reflection settles. You look tired, sure, but also like someone who knows what they're doing, or at least knows how to look like it. The sky darkens. The frogs begin to tune their voices. You smile. Evening again, and the Chinampa keeps floating. The stars blink into being slowly tonight, as if unsure whether they're welcome. The sky is clear again, painted in indigo and scattered silver. You've lit a small fire near the canal's edge. Not for warmth, but for company. The glow flickers against the reeds, casting tall shadows that sway like dancers unsure of the steps. You sit cross-legged on a reed mat, bowl of roasted amaranth in your lap. It's simple, salty, and satisfying. You eat it slowly, letting each crunch echo in the quiet. Tonight, you're not tired, not exactly, just slowed, your body heavy in a pleasant way. You've worked, you've weathered, and now, your Chinampa rests with you. The frogs begin their nightly chants again. Fewer now. Perhaps some are asleep, or simply listening. Across the water, other torches flicker, scattered like fireflies. You imagine your fellow farmers in their huts, some snoring, some whispering, some still stirring pots. You can almost hear the distant rhythm of a drum, this reality faint ceremonial. Maybe someone's telling a story by firelight. Maybe someone's dancing alone. You think about tomorrow's tasks, repairing that sagging corner, weaving a new net, checking the squash for grubs, but you don't plan them. You just let them drift across your mind. It's like canoes. Beside you, the willow sways. You lean against it, letting its bark press into your back. It smells like rain, bronze, and time. You pick up the carved gourd you found earlier. Yes, it's back, resting quietly beside the fire, as if it never left. You chuckle. Either you're sleepier than you thought, or the egret is pranking you again. You turn the gourd over in your hands. It's worn, but the spirals are still sharp. A symbol maybe, or just decoration. You decide it doesn't matter. You set it back down gently. The lake laps softly at the edges of the Chinampa. The fire crackles. A duck quacks once, then goes silent. As if clearing its throat before bed. You walk to the water's edge, gaze into the dark, and speak aloud. And not a prayer, not a chant. Just one soft sentence. Thank you for holding me. You don't expect an answer, but the silence that follows feels full. You return to the hut. The coals in the brazier glow faintly. Your hammock waits, swaying gently. You climb in, adjusting your blanket. The mint behind your ear crushed slightly, so begid park, but still fragrant. You stare at the ceiling, where the light plays in soft shadows, and your thoughts begin to blur, to tangle with the night. You think of the plants, already preparing for dawn, of the egret sleeping somewhere smugly, of a stone city that depends on mud, and of water, always over the water. It carries, it remembers, and tonight, as it keeps you.
Now the fire has gone low. The frogs have grown quiet. Your breath is slow. Your limbs are still. You've done enough for today. Outside your hut, the lake rests, flat and silver and barely stirring. The roots in your Chinampa sleep, curled around the soft warmth of soil. The vines sigh gently in the dark. The ducks, finally, are silent. The breeze slips through the reeds, like a lullaby without melody, and somewhere in the distance, water trickles between the canals. No hurry, Mahai, no rush. Just the soft turning of a world. That doesn't ask anything more of you tonight. Your hands still smell faintly of mint and earth. You let them rest on your chest. You feel your heart steady. Not loud, just there. There is no task left. No list. No voice calling. No need to explain the day or name every star. There is only this moment between the hush of night on and the whisper of tomorrow. This soft drifting. This floating stillness. And as your thoughts settle like silt at the bottom of a calm canal, you feel the Chinampa holding you, mud and roots and effort and care. The quiet labor of your days returned as peace. You close your eyes. Sleep now. The water remembers. The island holds. The night keeps you safe.